Shattered Pieces by Orpheus Kidwell, Chapter 7, Mount Glen Outside the Limits. So, Naruto, you sure we want to be doing this? It was a nervous voice that asked him. Gurrent, understand the threat, but this seems like an inappropriate time. The blonde simply smiled at the crystal user as he looked over the cliff they stood on to see a herd of seven Goliaths that made their home outside of his. They had been outreaching ever closer on his territory since they moved in, and he couldn't have that. I think it's the perfect time to show these Graham what Orochimaru did to us. We aren't normal fauna, Gurren. We're stronger than them, stronger than others could ever hope to be. We have to use that strength to make sure nothing takes our home from us. Gurren nodded, but still seemed a bit unsure. Sasori, Kankuro, do you have the dust artillery ready? He asked, getting a nod from the two. Both were wearing large headphones and stood next to a pair of artillery pieces that they had found in an old military base just outside of Mount Glen. With a little work, they fixed their disrepair and got them working to optimal position. While only two were present here, there were six in total. Snappers are at the ready, he commanded as a dozen Faunas took aim with high-caliber sniper rifles equipped with explosive dust ammunition. Illusionist begin. Six Faunas under his command then began to place an equal number of the Goliath under their spell. The seventh, who was the runt of the herd, was turned into a non-threat as several explosive rounds tore into one of its legs, simultaneously sending it into the ground. Artillery fire! Kankuro and Sasori simultaneously as Sasori took their cue, as artillery shells filled the ice dust slammed into the group of survivors, freezing them on impact with only the first round. Looking down at the herd, he activated his all-seeing eyes to get a better feel for what was happening as he raised his right hand. Everyone halted momentarily. Gurren, if you would. The woman nodded and knelt, placing her hands on the cliff. Purple crystals began spreading quickly from their location to the herd before large crystalline walls rose around them, close off in the shape of seven domes. The empty air within started crystallizing as well. Before their eyes, Gurren had trapped seven Goliaths within prisons of amethyst. There, even if they somehow break out, they'll be shattered into pieces and destroyed. Naruto nodded and turned to the clan, grinning. See, we can do things our way and get results. We don't have to fight everything head on. If we use the equipment we have, the skills we've gained, and our minds. Seven Goliath, it would take a squad of veteran huntsmen to pull off what we just did, and even then, there would be threat of injury to at least one. We may not be as large as group as Adams or the academies, or even just as one large city, but we're enough. We're family, and that means we can do anything together if we try hard enough. His clan, grinned back at him as if it was infectious. With them out of the way, we can sleep better at night knowing all that's left is a single nest on the west side of town. Even then, the Grim fear us. At the notion that they were strong enough to scare even Grim, the clan cheered Naruto. Looking up at the sky to see it was approaching dusk, he sent the artillery into a hammer space. I think it's time we head to bed, though. It's getting late and every day will be busy until we turn this place into a proper town to live in. No one could really argue with that. Naruto's house. The blonde arrived at his abode, in which he lived alone. It had originally been the Mount Glen Public Library, but it wasn't too difficult to renovate one of the office spaces into a small room. He liked having all the books at his fingertips anyways, and he knew that Yami loved it. As he walked into the building, he immediately felt like something was off. Quickly turning his all-seeing eyes and first spark on, he looked around for any sign of intruders. Seeing nobody, he slowly made his way through the shelves until... "Hello, my love," he heard the whisper in his ear a moment after something jumped onto his back from behind. Neo had her arm wrapped around his neck and her legs around his waist as she held onto him, her lips right next to his ear. It was only because of his first spark he didn't immediately fall from the new weight. "Didn't I tell you I would come visit?" Naruto sighed, but couldn't help himself from smiling as she hopped off him. When he turned, he noticed her eyes were both brown. So who am I speaking to right now, I wonder? Naruto asked as he looked at her. Neo grinned. "You can just call all of us Neo, you know. That's the name we gave ourselves to others so that they wouldn't have to remember so many names." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "How many flavors do you have?" he asked, trying to use a euphemism that was related to her name. Neo giggled but shrugged. "Who knows? I guess you'll just have to meet all of us, won't you?" Naruto sighed but smiled anyways. If that's important, I'll let you call me Marin. Mary for short." The blonde nodded. Do yourselves not just think of themselves as parts of Naruto?" The blonde-eyed Neo asked curiously. He shook his head. "Oh, then how? Well, I'm Naruto, the blonde explained. You may call me Yami, he spoke as I shifted to deep violet. When they shifted to blood red with slit pupils, Kurama grinned. And I'm Kurama. Naruto had control once more as Cerulean shown itself. We're different and help each other. We aren't one person, but more. A group of three brothers that share one body. And I guess that's how we see it. I control the body most of the time, but when I need help, Yami or Kurama will come out. Neo nodded with a thankful look in her eyes. I see. I guess it's because there's only three of you. Naruto looked at the girl a bit oddly, which caused her to just smile. Still not gonna tell you. The blonde just smiled back. So does Roman or Cinder know that you're here? Mary paused and shrugged. We don't need their permission to come see our love, was her response as brown bled into pink. Speaking of, we didn't finish last time we were here. Before Neo even pounced on him and locked lips, Naruto knew it was coming, even though this one didn't have as great of a shock factor as before. Naruto still felt the surge running through his body as Neo kissed him, pulling him in close as her hands rested on his chest and the other on his cheek. It wasn't until he began feeling short of breath that Neo actually pulled away, a large blush dusting her cheeks as Pink met Cerulean. A string of saliva still connected their lips as he looked at the girl. I've wanted to do that since we got here. She mentioned, fingers trailing over his cheek. Naruto, for his part, couldn't even speak. Neo giggled at his reaction. Of course, she had several years' experience over the blonde, so it couldn't be helped that she knew exactly what to do to him. When the boy finally found his voice, it was all he could do to keep a silly grin from his lips, though there wasn't anything to do about the blush. That was, I didn't know. You didn't know something like kissing could do that? She whispered in his ear as he shuddered. The hand on his chest slowly slid down to his waist. Oh, there is so much more that I could do. Make you feel? Naruto shivered as he felt her hand just barely graze his crotch before suddenly pulling back. But I didn't come here to liquefy your brain, she said, suddenly serious. Let's go somewhere secluded, okay? Shaking from his stupor, the blonde nodded despite his puzzled expression. He hadn't seen this Neo so serious before, and it made him very curious as to the reason. Naruto's room. As soon as the door was shut, Naruto found himself pressed against it by Neo. Her arms were around his neck once more, and her face was very close to his. Naruto, I need you to listen to me and not say anything. Just keep blushing and act cute. Neo's voice was even more quiet as usual. Only because of her spark could he even make it out. Honestly, he didn't think it would be difficult to follow her instructions. I think Cinder has spies here in the clan to keep an eye on you. She knows about what we did on the rooftop. She came to me after we left and tried to threaten me into manipulating you to our side. I'd rather die than betray my love, though. Only through sheer effort was Naruto able to keep his eyes from widening. I don't know what, but whoever controls Cinder wants you for their plans. She's going to try to do something. I just don't know what. I don't know if it's your semblance or the clan, but you want something. Naruto's cheeks reddened further, but that was more due to anger than embarrassment. Feeling him tense up, Neo kissed the boy's neck, then his chin before connecting their lips once more. It only lasted a few moments, but was enough to keep him distracted from anger. I don't know if she has cameras, bugs, or spies here, but it's not safe for you to speak freely with too many people in opposition to Cinder. I just want you to be careful. Naruto thought over what she said, but didn't respond to it. If there was a bug in the room, she could hear and punish Neo or do something to Adam. Turning on his all-seeing eyes momentarily, he didn't notice anything in the room or in the library, but it was difficult to be sure. He'd need to look in more detail later. Don't worry too much though. Neo pulled back and looked into his eyes. There was fear in them, but not for herself, it was for him. He also noticed that both eyes were white now. We love you and will do everything to protect you. This one was even quieter than the pink-eyed Neo, if that was possible. White bled back into pink as the more dominant of Neo's personalities took over and held him close. We won't lose you, even if it costs our lives. To be honest, Naruto didn't really understand why Neo had become so obsessed with him so quickly. At this point, he didn't care. All he knew was that he found himself becoming more attached to the girl little by little. Every time they met, laying a hand on her cheek, he smiled and used his thumb to wipe away a stray tear that threatened to spill out. He could tell that the girl was terrified of what Cinder could do and would do to him. Don't worry, Neo. Nothing will keep us apart, he stated. He wasn't quite sure where it came from, but it wasn't as if he regretted saying it. Neo grinned at that, grabbing him by his collar and pulling him into another kiss. This one seemed different than the other, though. It was less calm and more forceful. He thought that desperate was the right word to use here. It seemed as if Neo just wanted to ensure that he was still there. Truth be told, he was more than happy to comply. This is dangerous. I might get addicted to this sort of thing, he thought as she pulled him closer to his bed before forcing him to sit. Taking a seat in his lap, she started backing up with her ever more vigor, holding him as close as possible with which startled him. He's mine, Cinder, Neo thought to herself. He's mine, and you won't take him from me, not you and not anyone else. I won't let anyone have my love. I'll kill anyone who tries. Her thoughts became less and less coherent, and Naruto kissed her back, and she just let the ecstasy of having the one she loved, showing her affection, take over. She felt the weight of his aura in its passive state, and compared it to when Cinder flared hers. Smiling into the kiss, she couldn't help but think darkly, he's stronger than you, Cinder. You'll see. He just needs to be shown how to use it, and he'll kill you and take all your power. Then my Naruto will be the strongest in the world, and I'll be his loyal queen. I'll show you. We'll show all of you. Next morning, when Naruto woke up the next morning, he felt as if something was off. The weight in his bed, it felt weird. Slowly opening his eyes, he found a pair of pink ones looking back into his with a slight grin just below them. Why does it smell like strawberries? Half asleep, he wondered. Morning, Neo. He spoke without thinking before the words shook him awake. Widening his eyes, he looked up to see Neo was laying on top of him, the blanket covering the two of them as her head rested on his chest. Neo, he spoke her name slowly, trying to remember what happened last night. Did they? No, he would have remembered doing something like that. Neo, did we do that? The girl smiled as her bare hand stroked circles on the bed next to his head, a happy expression on her face. Not yet. Soon, but not yet, my love, she responded with a giggle, blushing at the thought. Believe me, I want to feel you inside me, feel all of your power in my deepest parts, but not yet. One step at a time, so be patient. Naruto felt his face heat up at her unabashed statement. It caused a certain stirring below, but he was somehow able to get it under control. Neo slowly got up, straddling the blonde as the blanket fell. If he had thought he had any control of his stirrings, Naruto was sadly mistaken. He saw that Neo was only in her underwear, a pink bra and panties with chocolate brown lace around the edge that made him think of ice cream for some reason. Noticing the boy staring at her chest, Neo grinned. Oh, does my love like that sort of thing? She teased him as she cupped her breast, moving them slowly as he turned his head to the side. Neo grinned. Don't worry, Naruto. I'll let you do all you want to them soon enough. Laying one hand on his chest, she slowly leaned forward and kissed him, her breast pressing into his chest in the process. Kissing the girl back, Naruto found himself severely disappointed when she pulled back and left the bed. Sitting up and looking at her, he saw she was getting dressed in her combat uniform. Neo, how did you get here? I forgot to ask you that. The girl paused in the process of putting her shirt on and smiled. I got a ride from Roman. He was snickering the whole time and saying how it would be great to tease you with and to anger Cinder. Naruto nodded, expecting no less from the orange-haired thief. He just liked things that were amusing after all. It's some time before Cinder shows up though, so we have a few days together at least. What makes you say that? Naruto asked. She went to see her mistress. It always takes her a few days to come back, even when she takes the bullhead. The blonde thought about that and concluded whoever Cinder's mistress was had to be on another continent. Was she working for Atlas? No, there's no way the Schnee would work with the Fang, and they were more or less controlled the council there. There was Mistral and on Animal. The underworld there was large enough that the possibility was high. Still, it was best not to assume until there was solid evidence. Shaking those thoughts away, he watched as Neil finished getting dressed before sitting on the bed next to him. What are you thinking about? Neo asked, very serious. She also handed him his own clothes and gestured for him to get dressed. Given she did so in front of him, he was sure anything less would insult her. Before he put his clothes on, he activated First Spark and touched the wall, channeling a charge of aura. Not enough to even dent his reserves, mind you, but still large to anyone else. He watched as the wall sparked. His all-seeing eyes told him that it had affected the entire library. What was that? Neo asked. Her calm expression was gone in lieu of a blush at the immense aura her love had just channeled without even looking tired. If there were any bugs, they're short-circuited now. I was just trying to think of where Cinder's boss could be, he explained as he got dressed. That long of a trip means she's off continent. If her mistress is in a kingdom, then she's got to be in Mistral. However, finding one criminal in that Mistral underworld would be a chore in and of itself. So I'm not sure if I'm hesitating because of the resource it would take, or because my instincts are telling me she's somewhere else. Honestly, I just don't know. Neo nodded and thought about it as she tapped her fingers against her trusty umbrella. It's difficult to say for certain, she finally noted. The only thing to do is act like we're on her side. Maybe she'll slip up if she's trust us. Still, I want you and the clan to be strong enough to fight her if you need. Do you mind showing me around, Monkland? Naruto smiled and nodded. Let's see. It's too bad you missed our hunt yesterday. And Neon tilted her head. Oh, we took out that annoying herd of Goliath that kept getting closer to us. It was a little underwhelming, honestly. Neo's eyes widened at the statement. That blush returned full force as Neo's mind concocted all sorts of convoluted and ridiculous scenarios of Naruto single-handedly killing seventh Goliath by himself. Each one was more crazy than the last, and the girl even started drooling a bit. The blonde thought it was best not to interrupt her and just waited for her to finish so they could have their tour. She is certainly interesting, Yami noted while Kurama just laughed. Oh, I like her. Nice catch, Naru. This should be loads of fun. End of chapter 7. Shattered Pieces by Orpheus Kidwell, Chapter 8. After Neo's fantasies had resolved themselves, Naruto took her out into his base. To be honest, given the population and the infrastructures, he may as well start calling it a city at this point. It wasn't a kingdom, not a province, but definitely larger than a village. Regardless of that, he was trying to think of the best place to start her tour of Mount Glen. I suppose the best place to start is the hub, he muttered, getting the girl's attention. At her questioning look, he explained, leading her downtown. The hub is what we call what was once Mount Glen's town hall. It's where the missions are given to the clan. Since we don't have any farms or vassal villages, it's difficult to get a hold of things like food and money. Most of the missions are raids on tribal groups or establishing trade between villages in exchange for protection or the salvage we have. We also do some grim extermination in exchange for payment from different groups. Neil frowned. You're thinking that the clan is acting a lot like a kingdom, right? At her nod, he smiled. Well, since we're just a branch of Adam's Fang, we don't get funding from Menagerie. The mines here give us a lot of dust, but we needed to find a way to survive. Unlike the other Fang, we don't really hate humanity, I guess. Don't get me wrong, most of my family hate the Schnee, but humanity in general, not so much. Out here in the wastelands, everyone works together out of necessity. The Grim are so dangerous, any discrimination and hatred disappears out of the sense of survival instincts. The girl nodded, her pink eyes shifting to white momentarily before turning back to pink. Still, we don't have too many missions yet. We have to get the trust of a village before they start asking too much from us. Resources are everything out here after all. They have to make sure that we won't just betray them like the tribals out here before investigating too much into us. We only have 2 villages that give us anything right now. Still, it's almost enough to get by. Between them, what we take from the tribes and selling scrap, we're able to survive by rationing everything. I've got talks going on in 2 other nearby villages that are just a little too far out of Vale's reach to keep garrison stationed. We, on the other hand, have more than enough people to garrison members there. Neo nodded, impressed with the solution Naruto had used to keep his family afloat after leaving the protection of the Fang's base. 3 months, and he'd assembled his family into something far different than the other branches of the Fang she'd seen. Are the villages loyal? She asked the blonde. Naruto thought about it before nodding. Doesn't that make them vassals? Naruto chuckled and shook his head. No, we aren't a kingdom. His reply was simple, but Neo didn't think it was acceptable. Naruto had a military, was offering protection to weaker leaders in exchange for protection, and had attacks and had a capital city that was much larger than those he protected. What else was left for him to have a kingdom? Cream spoke up from within her mind. He can't take the crown while there's another kingdom in the area. Vale is too large for him to establish a kingdom. The voice was emotionless and apathetic, very clinical. If we want to make him king, Vale becomes the largest obstacle. He's strong enough to be ruler, but with that much competition, plus, there's Ospen to worry about. Nia thought about it before that grin grew. All she had to do was find a way to get rid of enough ruling members of Vale, and staff would begin that Naruto became the only choice for king. How to give him claim, though? This would require thought and research. Neil, you alright? Naruto asked, watching as several emotions passed over her face, each emotion coming with a change in color of either one or both of her eyes. The girl shook out of her blotting as they returned to her inverted colors, smiling. After giving a curt nod, Naruto smiled and led her further into Mount Glen. Before they could go much further, though, they were stopped by a member of the clan that Neo didn't recognize. Lord Naruto, I have a message for you. The girl spoke in a very formal tone. She was fair of skin with raven hair tied in a bun atop her head between two rabbit ears, while she had two hairbands keeping her bangs together, each one lying over her shoulder. Onyx eyes looked at Naruto with an emotion Neo didn't like at all. The Tina also wore a teal. What were those called again? She thought that they were called a Haori, if what she remembered of her time in Mistral was correct. Yes, a teal Haori over a Yakama, and a brown all by tying it all together. Neo's first thought was that she did not like this girl. Ah, what is it, Haku? Naruto wondered, not noticing the darkening expression on Neo's face as she reached for her umbrella. Lord Zabuza said that he needed to speak with you immediately. It was something to do with the mission that Kisame took and needed reinforcements on. He's heading out with some members to aid him, but wanted to request your presence given the severity of the situation. The blonde nodded. Thank you, Haku. He's at the armory then, I'm assuming. Haku nodded. I'll head over there. He looked at Neo, only now noticing the glare he leveled at Haku. Neo, almost immediately the hatred disappeared as she looked at her love and smiled. Two things. The girl nodded. First, would you like to accompany me? If Kisame is in trouble, it has to be something particularly bad. I need to go myself. Without a second of hesitation, she grinned and latched onto his arm. He took that as a yes. Second, Haku is a boy. Neo did a double take at that knowledge, staring at the faunus in question. He smiled and nodded, pulling the collar on his Haori down enough to reveal his Adam's apple. This only caused Neo to grin even more, snuggling into the slightly shorter boy she had claimed as hers. No one was going to take him from her. She would make sure of it. Please lead the way, Haku. The rabbit faunus nodded and led them to the armory. Mount Glen Armory. It took several minutes to get to the armory. Situated on the far side of the area of Mount Glen that the clan had cleared out was a military base that Hidan had called Fort Cobalt. It had been responsible for keeping the city and several other nearby settlements safe from Grim. Obviously, it had failed horribly. That said, most of the equipment seemed to survive in a condition that was repairable. Given its secure facilities, Naruto had the clan renovate and rebuild parts of the installation for several purposes. A good portion of their supplies were kept here, under constant guard by several members whose abilities were specialized for defense and led by Gurren. Near the entrance of the army stood a tall man with bandages wrapped around the lower half of his face and his neck, wearing a black sleeveless shirt, a pair of armored gloves that extended up his forearm, and a pair of matching pants. The man also carried a large cleaver-like blade on his back. Lord Naruto, you're here? The man spoke with a look in his eyes that Naruto couldn't quite place. Haku here tells me that Kisame got in over his head, and now we have to go save him. Is that correct? The man paused before nodding. All right, who are you taking? I'm assuming Haku and Kimimaru. I was also hoping to bring you along. Naruto nodded. I was planning on accompanying you. Oh, Neo will be coming as well. She arrived yesterday, and while I was planning on giving her a tour, I think this will be a little more fun. Zabuza looked at the blonde as he said that, at the eyes specifically. Oddly, he didn't notice any red when Naruto spoke those words. Was Kisame influencing their leader, perhaps? That didn't sound like a good thing. We're going to have to take the bullhead. Kisame and Suigetsu are on the red coast. The blonde widened his eyes, which quickly turned violet at the name. Zabuza stepped back as Yami's aura flared dangerously, threatening to crush him beneath its weight. Haku was shaking in Neo. For some reason, she had the largest grin on her face Zabuza had ever seen and looked as if she was about to orgasm. What is wrong with that idiot? And he took Suigetsu with him. Did he have a death wish? That imbecile is going to get it so bad when I get my hands on it. Yami's voice suddenly stopped as Violet gave way back to Cerulean. With Naruto back in control, his aura receded as he breathed deeply. Sorry about that. Still, at least I could keep Kurama back. Are you two alright? Naruto asked. Zabuza and Haku, having seen Neo's reaction, they nodded, though there was still a little shaking up. It really put in perspective why he was the leader. Oh, where's Kimimaru? I'm here, Naruto. He heard the voice from further back down the hall before looking up, seeing Kimimaru sitting atop it. Are we ready to leave? The blonde looked at the other three. Zabuza looked serious. Haku seemed ready. And Neo, well, she was still a bit delirious from his aura. 2 out of the 3 wasn't bad, and she would be fine by the time they got to their destination. He nodded, which was the only signal Kimimaru needed. Pulling out his scroll, the boy dialed the number. Go ahead and start it up. We're leaving as soon as we get there, he told whoever was piloting the bullhead before jumping to the ground and landing on his feet, aura cushioning the force. After you, Captain. The boy gestured. Naruto smiled and took the lead, and Neo still attached to his arm as she followed with a dreamy expression as she was trying to come down from the feeling of his aura. The others followed closely behind. Still, if they were going to the Red Coast, things could get rough. He needed to be on his guard the entire time. Red Coast. The coastline nearest the mountain range that Vale was settled near was known as the Red Coast. It gained this name due to deep red color of the sand over several kilometers worth of beach. According to legend, there was a battle against a large grim horde before the Great War, and it took the lives of tens of thousands of soldiers. The sand was stained with their blood as a reminder of where they died and what they died for. Whether it was true or not mattered less at this point than what was true currently. It was home to the largest nest within 1,000 kilometers of Vale. That was why Yami had lost his mind when he found out where Kisame had gone. Not that he didn't know the full story right now, but he would certainly find out. There was absolutely no reason his clan should be on the Red Coast, let alone those two. Where are they, Sabuza? Naruto asked. Despite the calm voice, the other members of the squad could tell just how much he was holding his emotions back. We don't actually know, the man answered after a few moments. We received a distress signal from Kisame's scroll, a message on loop, and a location. However, given it was a message on loop, the blonde nodded with a sigh. He's probably not there anymore. Okay, we should start with the last known location and search for anything that might lead us to them. Our priority is getting everyone out of here safely. That includes all of you. I don't want any unnecessary risks. Everyone nodded as the ship began hovering over a particular stretch of beach. Naruto stood and headed over to the cockpit. Finding Hidan, land away from the coast in an area where there aren't any grim or threats to the bullhead. Make sure that you're ready to take off at the moment's notice wherever I send the signal. Chances are, if you get the signal instead of a call from me, we need immediate evacuation. Of course, Lord Uzumaki, you're sure you don't want me to go with you though? Naruto shook his head. I need you to keep the bullhead safe. Without it, there's very little chance of us getting out of here. You have the most important job. We'll all die if you make a mistake. Hida nodded with a grin. Naruto turned back to his team as the door of the aircraft opened. All right, let's head down there now. As Naruto spoke, his cerulean eyes bled into bright red, calm expression becoming a mad grin. We've got a shark to skin and a grim to kill. Red turned to purple as Yami spoke. Don't let your guard down. Move as a team. As Violet turned back to Cerulean, Naruto jumped from the vehicle, sure he would be quickly followed. Even before he hit the ground, Naruto knew this wasn't going to be easy, using Boris to slow his descent, frost coating the sand as he landed. Naruto had to immediately roll away from the Borbotusk that tried to steamroll him with its pinwheel attack. Coming to his feet, he noted that it wasn't a normal Grim, it was Alpha class. Every Grim had several classifications. There was Species for one, which dictated abilities, instincts, and strategies required to counter it. Just as important was class and rank. The classes could be divided into Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Sigma, and Omega based on strength and size, while ranking consisted of King, Queen, Rook, Bishop, Knight, and Pawn based on specific rules. All Grim below Alpha class were considered to be pawns, while ranks could be used to describe how powerful an Alpha class was, as well as its role in the nest. The mammoth Borbotusk, as Alpha class were commonly known as, recovered and began spinning again. The sand was thrown in every direction as it did so, activating his all-seeing eyes and first spark. Naruto waited for the beast to rush at him. He was not left in suspension for long and jumped out of the way. As he did, he threw on some first fire dust he had in hyperspace and launched several spears of orange flames that slammed into the thing's flank. The force caused the board-like Grim to lose balance and topple to its side. Snorting loud enough to rock the ground, it tried to recover back to its feet, but only managed to kick up more dust. Naruto took this opportunity to get close to it and pull out a large spike from hammer space. Channeling first spark through it, he stabbed the blade deep into his enemy's soft belly. Within moments, it exploded into black dust, coating the red sand it had laid on, storing the spike back into hammer space. Naruto turned and saw that his soldiers and Neo had landed. The blonde walked over to them, not even bothering to rein his aura in anymore. Zabuza and Haku seemed to want to stay some distance from him, given he had also lost his emotional restraint. The anger at his stupid family members, public for all to see. Kimimaro walked next to Naruto as if he was unfazed. In truth, it was only because of how much resistance he had from working all those times with Kurama. Certainly, that psychopath had his own points. Neo was holding herself back as she felt the aura, understanding the severity of the situation. With Naruto's aura fully open and unrepressed, Neo looked closely at it. Usually, someone's aura was one color. It might be bright or murky or a blend, but it was always a single color. Her lover had something unique though: reds, blues, greens, yellows, violets, every color of the spectrum she could think of, and some she didn't know the name of, swirled around him, while another huntsman might have their aura close to their body to keep them from being harmed during a fight. His was spread out and almost phantasmal and ephemeral. It looked as if she had been transported to some ghost world, with the way the air shone different, almost translucent colors, how the ground was a deep blood red, and the way the sky shone a dark gray due to the concentration of grim in the area. As an illusionist, Neo prided herself in details. She could discern differences in an environment almost immediately. This was the work of a master artist, a genuine painter who took his brush to the air itself. She wasn't sure whether Naruto was the artist and the world was his canvas, or vice versa. When she saw him take on an alpha class single-handedly and take it down in mere seconds, all her fantasies had been turned to reality. He had power beyond what even she had comprehended. So why was he so subservient to Cinder? Why didn't he just kill her and free the Fang from her grasp? What could possibly cause someone with this much power to abstain from taking everything that rightfully belonged to him? Why didn't he have at least his own kingdom by now? These were the questions Neo needed answers to. She would find out, and then she would help him get everything coming to him. Just what did he have coming to him? One might ask. The world. Neo would give him the whole world. He deserved nothing less. End of chapter 8.